I was never the type to believe in fairy tales, especially not the kind that started with a second marriage. My mom had raised me alone since I was 10, after my dad left one ordinary morning without a word. Since then it had always been just us, me and her against the world. When she told me she was getting remarried, I gave her a polite smile and offered the usual congratulations, but deep down I was bracing myself. I didn't trust the idea of a man stepping in this late in our lives, especially someone trying to play a father figure. His name was Mark. A quiet, well-kept man with tired eyes and a calm presence. He was around 40, a few years older than my mom, and unlike the loud, boastful men I had dated in my early 20s, Mark was gentle. He didn't try too hard, didn't make grand gestures, but paid attention. During his first week in the house, he noticed I drank my coffee black with a pinch of cinnamon. The next morning, that's exactly how it was served to me, without him saying a word. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Just good manners. But something about the way he moved around the house made it feel less like an intrusion and more like someone filling in the silent spaces that had long been there. He didn't ask too many questions, didn't try to parent me, which I appreciated. Still, I kept my distance, choosing politeness over connection. But I noticed things. When the faucet in my bathroom started leaking, he fixed it without being asked. When I left my jacket on the hallway chair, it was always neatly hung up by morning. Once he caught me crying quietly in the kitchen after a bad day at work. He didn't ask why, didn't pry, just poured me tea and sat across from me in silence until I finished. No man had ever just sat with me like that. I hated how much I started to notice his presence. The way he leaned in when he listened. The way he laughed, low and genuine, only when something truly amused him. One afternoon, I watched him from the porch while he changed a tire on my mom's car. His sleeves were rolled up, brow furrowed in concentration. I hated the thought that crept into my mind. How effortless he looked, how strong, how safe. Then came the guilt. The heavy, suffocating guilt. I was 25. He was married to my mother. This wasn't a teenage crush or some fictional scenario. This was real life and nothing about it was okay. So I pulled back. Spoke less. Avoided dinners. But it only made things worse because even in silence I was more aware of him. One night I overheard him asking my mom if I was okay. She laughed it off, said I was just moody. But he didn't laugh. He said, "She's hurting. I can feel it." I went to bed that night with tears on my pillow, wondering how a man who was practically a stranger seemed to understand me more than people I'd known my entire life. I tried staying out late more often, telling myself I needed distance. I filled my time with old friends, extra shifts at work, anything that kept me from being in the same space as Mark. But avoidance only made me more aware. Every time I walked into the house and smelled fresh coffee or heard the low hum of a sports show in the living room, my chest tightened. He had become a part of the house, not by force but by ease, like he had always belonged. Then came the night everything shifted. It was late, well past midnight. I had come home from a friend's birthday, not drunk but tired and emotionally raw. My heels clicked loudly on the hardwood floor as I tiptoed into the kitchen for water. He was there, sitting quietly at the counter with a book and a half-empty mug. His eyes met mine and he gave a small, surprised smile. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I nodded, unsure why I wasn't heading straight to my room. He slid the glass toward me and waited. I didn't know what made me speak, but I did. I told him how the birthday had felt hollow, how my friends felt like strangers lately, how work drained me, and how I didn't know what I was even chasing anymore. He listened, really listened, like my words mattered. When I paused, expecting him to offer a quick fix, he didn't. He simply said, "That sounds heavy," and stayed quiet. There was no touch, no look out of place. Just presence. It was worse than anything else. I left that night feeling more conflicted than ever, because he hadn't crossed any line, but it felt like one had been quietly erased. Over the next week I found myself noticing smaller things. His cologne on a shared towel. The way he said my name, soft, deliberate, like it wasn't just another word. I caught myself dressing differently at home. Nothing obvious, just aware. I thought I was hiding it well until my mom asked me if I was all right. "You seem distant lately," she said while folding laundry. I faked a smile and told her I was just tired. She kissed my forehead and went on with her day, trusting me without question. That trust dug deep into my guilt, but I couldn't untangle my thoughts. I wasn't in love, I told myself. It was just attention. Just kindness. But deep down I knew it wasn't true. I had felt attention before. I had received kindness. This was different. One morning I woke up early and saw him sitting alone on the patio. He didn't see me watching, but he looked lost, like he was thinking hard about something. I stood there, frozen by the thought that maybe he felt it too. I hated how much I wanted that to be true. I hated that I was wondering what would happen if my mother wasn't in the picture. It was a dark, shameful thought, and I carried it like a secret sin. I spent that day questioning everything. Was I imagining this connection? Was I lonely enough to project feelings where none existed? But then I remembered his eyes that night in the kitchen, the silence that felt like understanding, and I knew it wasn't just me. Something real had started growing in that space between us. Unspoken, undeniable, and completely impossible. I wasn't prepared for how fast things unraveled. One afternoon while walking past the study, I heard them talking, Mark and my mom. She was excited about a job opportunity overseas, something she'd always dreamed of. "It's just for a year," she said. "You can come with me or wait it out here." Mark was quiet for a long moment before replying, "I think you should go. This matters to you." His voice was calm, but I heard the hesitation, the weight of something unspoken. My stomach turned. The idea of him leaving unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. I tried to reason with myself. He wasn't mine. I had no claim, no right to feel anything. So that night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every word of their conversation. I knew then that I couldn't bury it any longer. I had to know where he stood. The next day I asked him to talk. Just the two of us. I was nervous, cold sweat forming on my palms, but I couldn't carry this silence anymore. I started carefully, choosing every word. "I think there's something between us," I said quietly, "and I don't know what to do with it." He looked at me, not surprised, not ashamed, just honest. "I felt it too," he said. "But I've fought it every day since it started." He said he never meant for it to happen, never planned to connect with me like that. He respected my mother, loved her in his own way, but what was between us, me and him, was something else. Something deeper. Something neither of us had dared to name. We both knew it had never crossed a line physically, but emotionally, we were already there. I asked him why he stayed. Why pretend? He said he'd been trying to protect everyone, me, my mom, himself, from the truth. But now, with her potentially moving abroad, everything was changing. He admitted that part of him hoped her leaving would create a clean break, that distance would make this easier. But there was no easy in this. No path that didn't hurt someone. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just listened, and for once I let the pain sit. Because even though I had dreamed of hearing those words, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a fracture. He told me I deserved someone free, someone without complications, without history tied to my mother. I told him I didn't want perfect. I wanted real. But even as I said it, I knew timing had already decided our fate. By the end of the conversation, we both knew nothing could happen, not now. He was still married, and I was still the daughter of the woman he'd promised to build a life with. There were no secrets left, but there was also no resolution. Only quiet, mutual heartbreak. As I walked away, I didn't feel relieved. I felt hollow. I had confronted the truth I was so desperate to unearth, and it left me with nothing but a heavier silence. I moved out within a month. Not because I hated them, but because I needed space to breathe. To feel without guilt crawling up my spine. I found a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I focused on work, started therapy, and cut contact with both Mark and my mother for a while. I needed distance from the past, from what could have been, and from the part of me that still ached for something I wasn't supposed to want. Time didn't erase the feelings, but it helped me understand them. Therapy forced me to ask hard questions. Why I felt drawn to someone who was emotionally unavailable, why I attached so deeply to someone who showed me consistent care, even if he wasn't meant for me. The answers weren't simple, but they were honest. I hadn't just wanted Mark. I had wanted to be seen, to be chosen, to be understood without performance. And for a short time I had all of that in a man I could never have. A year passed. My mother took the job abroad just like she planned. Mark didn't go with her. I learned through a mutual friend that they had separated, not in bitterness but in quiet agreement. Their lives had been on different paths from the start. She was chasing the freedom she'd never had, and he was rooted in stillness, in presence. They remained friends, but the marriage had ended without fanfare. I didn't reach out right away. I wasn't sure what I wanted or if I even had the right to want anything. But one weekend I ran into him at a bookstore. He looked different, calmer, more grounded, but his eyes held the same warmth. We exchanged a quiet hello and the conversation flowed naturally. There was no awkwardness, no pretense, just a mutual understanding that time had passed, and something between us still quietly lived. We started seeing each other again. Not in secret, not with urgency. Just as two people who once shared a moment too complicated to name. We had long talks, walks through the city, late-night phone calls that didn't carry guilt anymore. He was no longer my stepfather. He was just a man and I was just a woman, and everything else had dissolved. There was no grand confession, no dramatic kiss. Just a simple choice, to let something new grow separate from the past. We agreed to take things slow, to build trust without rushing. For once we were on even ground. We didn't owe anyone explanations. We had already paid the price of silence, of restraint, of walking away from something real. I don't know where it will go, and that's okay. All I know is that love doesn't always arrive the way you expect. Sometimes it comes softly, wrapped in complications and mistakes. And if you're lucky, it stays, not as a storm but as still water. Quiet. Certain. Steady. Just like the way he first looked at me when I didn't even realize I was waiting to be seen.